800 hours. The skies over Hormuz were shattered by the alarms of general quarters as the U.S. superfleet shifted to its highest level of combat readiness. Something was unfolding far beyond what intelligence analysts had anticipated. The destroyer USS Delbert D. Black had locked its Spy-6 fire control radar directly onto the command center of Iran's $1.5 billion carrier, the Shahed Bagheri. Beneath the surface, 20 IRGC fast attack craft moved into position, forming a deadly pincer at one of the world's most critical energy choke points. Overhead, F/A-18S from the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln thundered across the sky, laser-guided systems trained on every Shahed drone launcher. One wrong move, and the entire region could spiral into a crisis powerful enough to shake the global economy. Tehran believed it had cornered the American giant, but just as its plan seemed ready to unfold, a terrifying truth appeared on the radar screen, one that stunned every commanding officer involved. What was really moving in the shadows beneath the sea? The confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz has become a real-world laboratory for 21st century asymmetric warfare. To understand why Tehran would risk so much on a single operation, you have to understand the logic behind its maritime strategy. Without the industrial capacity to build a conventional aircraft carrier, the IRGC transformed a massive 250-meter commercial container hull into something entirely different. They added an angled flight deck, mounted dozens of one-way drone launch systems, and installed Zulfikar missile racks. The result was the Shahed Bagheri, a $1.5 billion mobile stronghold. On paper, it looked like a slow-moving and vulnerable target, but inside the narrow waters of the strait, it served a far more dangerous purpose. A Tier 1 decoy built to dominate the world's most important energy artery. At 8:42 a.m., the standoff turned into something far more unsettling. As the USS Delbert D. Black maintained a steady 18 knots, the Shahed Bagheri flooded the area with intense electronic interference. At the same moment, 20 IRGC fast attack craft spread into a crescent formation, trying to funnel the American destroyer toward the jagged Iranian coastline. The crew of the Black remained in complete emissions silence. But as the Spy-6 radar peeled back layer after layer of the Bagheri's signature, its digital combat system detected a chilling anomaly. The signals coming from the Iranian vessel were not coming from drone control stations at all. They were being generated by powerful simulator units mounted across the deck. The Shahed Bagheri was not the true striking platform. It was an electronic phantom, a multi-billion-dollar shell meant to lure the American Aegis system into exhausting its missile inventory on an empty threat. The real danger was below. While the world's attention remained fixed on the surface, Iran had deployed a swarm of Ghadir-class mini-subs and autonomous underwater vehicles beneath the hulls of passing civilian oil tankers. These underwater predators were using the overwhelming engine noise of merchant ships as both a physical and acoustic shield, receiving low-frequency command bursts from controllers hidden in the coastal cliffs. They were crawling along the seabed less than 2,000 yards from the Black's propellers. How does the U.S. Navy solve a needle in a haystack problem when a 300,000-ton oil tanker is effectively being used as cover? Because one mistake could trigger an environmental and economic disaster on a global scale. By 8:50 a.m., the Hormuz chessboard was dangerously unbalanced. While the decoy ship Shahed Bagheri continued drawing attention on the surface, Iranian mini-subs and unmanned underwater vehicles had silently closed in on the USS Delbert D. Black, coming within less than 2,000 yards. Their tactic was devastating in its simplicity. They hid beneath the belly of the civilian supertanker Majestic Sapphire, a 300,000-ton giant, using its engine noise to mask their own acoustic footprint. Trying to detect a mini-submarine under the shadow of a giant oil tanker was like trying to hear a mosquito in the middle of a roaring rock concert. And if the U.S. misidentified the situation and struck the tanker, the consequences would be immediate and catastrophic. This was the final layer of Iran's strategy. Force the Americans into an impossible choice. But the U.S. Navy had already begun to respond. From the deck of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, two MH-60R Seahawk anti-submarine helicopters lifted into the fog. Like sea wolves, they moved into position and deployed a dense grid of AN/SSQ-53G passive sonar buoys around the tanker formation. At 9:05 a.m., the United States began what could only be described as underwater acoustic surgery. Instead of relying on conventional detection methods, the Seahawks used a fusion processing algorithm capable of stripping away thousands of layers of background noise from the oil tankers, isolating the distinct low-frequency signature of the Ghadir-class propellers. They didn't need direct visual contact. They were mapping the seabed through sound alone. The moment Iran realized its acoustic trap was being unraveled, the Shahed Bagheri made its move in the open. It activated its fire control radar and locked onto the Seahawk helicopters, hoping to pressure them into pulling back. But the USS Delbert D. Black had no intention of reacting the way Iran expected. Instead of launching missiles, the Flight 3 destroyer used advanced acoustic signature masking to conceal its true position. By adjusting the flow around its propellers and activating simulated acoustic emitters, the Black created an underwater ghost. To Iranian submarine sensors, it appeared as though the American destroyer had altered course and was now several miles away. Iran believed it was closing in on the target. In reality, it was chasing a carefully crafted illusion. And while Iranian operators were still trying to interpret the false signature, the USS Delbert D. Black quietly transmitted the real target coordinates to a Virginia-class submarine waiting deep below. At that moment, the hunter had become the hunted without even realizing it. At 9:15 a.m., inside the command center of the Shahed Bagheri, the mood changed from confidence to complete digital paralysis. Iranian commanders expected to see the final approach path of their Shahed drone swarm as it moved in for the decisive phase of the operation. Instead, their screens filled with flickering symbols, corrupted targeting data, and warning messages signaling system integrity failures. This was not conventional jamming. This was precision-level digital disruption carried out by the invisible architecture of the American Electronic Warfare Network. High above the strait, two EA-18G Growlers from the USS Abraham Lincoln had already established a high-bandwidth digital link with the USS Delbert D. Black's Sea-Whip Block 3 system. Working together, they weren't simply filling the spectrum with electronic noise. They were conducting a full spectral breakdown of the swarm's control network. Using machine-assisted signal analysis, the U.S. Navy isolated the precise timing intervals and data checksums that kept hundreds of drones operating as one synchronized strike formation. The goal was never to seize every drone individually. They only needed to disrupt a small fraction of the command stream, around 15% of the packets. That was enough. The effect on the IRGC network was immediate and severe. As corrupted data began reaching the drone's mission computers, the formation started to lose cohesion. Expensive autonomous systems drifted off course, misaligned their flight paths, and in some cases collided mid-air. To Iranian operators, it looked as if an invisible digital infection was tearing through the entire swarm architecture. At the same time, the U.S. fleet launched an advanced RF fingerprinting operation. Every urgent command burst sent from the Iranian mothership in an attempt to restore control was intercepted, processed, and used to pinpoint the exact locations of hidden emitters and underground command sites buried deep inside the coastal limestone of Keshem Island. In that moment, the hunters had unknowingly revealed a detailed map of some of their most sensitive command and control positions to the American Aegis network. But the real masterstroke was psychological. The U.S. Navy never truly needed to take control of the drones. It only needed Iranian commanders to believe that it had. When Iranian operators watched parts of the swarm appear to turn back toward their own formation, panic spread through the chain of command. Emergency security doctrines kicked in. From their perspective, it looked as though the Americans had compromised the encryption structure and might redirect the entire drone wave back against the Shahed Bagheri itself. Faced with the possibility of total systems collapse and the horrifying image of their own drones becoming the final instrument of disaster, Iranian leadership made a desperate decision. At 9:20 a.m., fearing a complete U.S. takeover of the network, Tehran's Central Command issued the emergency self-destruct order. In a single moment, thousands of Shahed drones, the pride of Iran's asymmetric arsenal, ignited their onboard fail-safe charges and plunged into the waters of the Gulf like burning metal rain. The Dragon swarm was wiped out by the very hands that had launched it. And for the IRGC, the humiliation was only beginning. By 9:30 a.m., the collapse of the drone operation had pushed Tehran into a state of strategic desperation. For IRGC commanders, losing such a high-value asset demanded an immediate and highly visible escalation if they were to preserve regional credibility. So they reached for their final and most dangerous card, the missile cities. Deep within the jagged limestone cliffs of Kashim Island, the blast doors of underground bunkers began to open. Fire control radars for the Noor anti-ship cruise missiles, active radar homing weapons with a range of 120 kilometers, came to life and fixed their attention on the USS Delbert D. Black. This was now a standoff at the narrowest part of the strait. The Noor was designed for sea-skimming flight, riding just meters above the waves to reduce detection time. At this distance, a concentrated missile launch could ignite a severe global energy shock and push the region into a much wider conflict within minutes. One decision could unleash a wave of incoming steel, powerful enough to test the American Aegis shield at its absolute limit. And yet the U.S. Navy remained completely composed. In a display of absolute confidence, the Delbert D. Black maintained its steady 18-knot transit. It did not race for open water. It did not alter course. The destroyer deliberately held its signature in place, sending an unmistakable message toward the Iranian coastline. We know where you are, and we are not intimidated. That is the essence of modern naval dominance. The side with the stronger integrated system does not have to flinch. While Iranian crews stood tense over their launch consoles, the American Overwatch element made its move. From the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, operating beyond the horizon, EA-18G Growlers launched a wave of MALDJ decoys, digital phantoms capable of imitating the radar signature of Super Hornets or even larger strike aircraft. Within seconds, Iranian radar scopes were flooded with what appeared to be 50 fast-moving aerial contacts approaching from multiple directions. Tehran's commanders were thrown into total tactical uncertainty. They had only seconds to choose. Do they fire their remaining missiles at what appeared to be incoming U.S. aircraft, exposing the coordinates of their underground bunkers and inviting an immediate Tomahawk response? Or do they hold fire and accept a devastating strategic setback? It had become a duel in which the United States had already taken aim, while Iran was still trying to determine which target on the screen was even real. The IRGC thought it had cornered a giant. Instead, it realized too late that the giant had already moved behind it. By 9:45 a.m., as Iranian commanders finally understood they had been staring at a digital mirage, the standoff ended not with an explosion, but with silence. Faced with the risk of losing their underground missile infrastructure in a counterstrike, Tehran chose preservation over escalation. The fire control radars went dark. A full withdrawal was ordered. The Shahed Bagheri, the $1.5 billion paper fortress, turned back toward Bandar Abbas under the persistent watch of American surveillance assets overhead. The United States did not sink the vessel because in the world of high-stakes intelligence, a floating platform can be more valuable than a wreck on the seabed. That ship had now become a billion-dollar liability. Every time the IRGC activates its engines, powers its sensors, or moves it into position again, it gives away another piece of the puzzle. Its presence no longer projects strength. It broadcasts intent. This was more than a tactical success. It was an intelligence victory. The U.S. did not seek open conflict, but it made clear that it was fully prepared to control how such a confrontation would end. In the deep blue waters of the strait, one rule remained above all others. Don't touch the boat. What do you think about this outcome? Was the restraint shown by the captain of the Delbert D. Black the right call, or should the U.S. have responded more aggressively? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy high-stakes strategic analysis like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Navy Vector so you never miss the next briefing. The sensors are live, the board is set. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next deck.